Hello, my name is Brian York. I am attending William Woods University, EDU 528, Financing the Athletic Program, Week 5, and I am working to present Hickman High School and Columbia Public Schools and how they should add a boys volleyball program. This presentation is meant for Dr. Yearwood, Columbia Public Schools Superintendent, as he has asked us to explore options for adding another sport. The options he gave were soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, rugby, girls wrestling, and boys volleyball. Soccer, boys and girls, are a non-starter, as we have had both of them for more than a generation. Girls wrestling is also a non-starter, as it was added a few years ago. I personally feel like field hockey, lacrosse, and rugby are also not really viable. Field hockey in the sense that it is a fall sport and it uses the same facilities as boys soccer as well as football, and I could only imagine the liability of one of those hard field hockey balls flying off the field and hitting someone running on the track for cross country, as well as the similar situation for lacrosse. Lacrosse might be a spring sport, but again, they're competing with facilities for girls soccer, as well as the track that goes around the field with track. Similar to field hockey, I can only imagine what would happen if an errant lacrosse ball were to hit a track athlete or get underneath the ankle of a track athlete, and again, the legal liability that comes with that injury. Rugby is not a sport of any interest in Columbia enough to have it as a full-fledged sport. As a matter of fact, it's not even considered a club at this point in the high schools. Boys volleyball, on the other hand, has lots of support from parents, from athletes, as well as a youth program. As we move forward with boys volleyball, we must check for its viability. First of all, is there any student interest? Actually, in Columbia, there is. Parents have come to the middle school athletic directors, like myself, and asked for a boys volleyball program. They've done it in high school. I know that in our specific middle school, we actually had a parent that came to me, then the district athletic director, and then even on to Misha to try and get their son onto our girls volleyball team because there was no option for boys volleyball. Boys volleyball is sanctioned by Misha, and it is a spring sport, which also helps with a factor later on. In terms of local competition, in the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned how I thought not only for Hickman High School, but for Columbia Public Schools, because if all of Columbia Public Schools adopt boys volleyball, and again, that should happen if one school does because of the equity within the district, my hopes would be that our sports conference would also adopt boys volleyball, so we would not only have our three Columbia high schools, but also Jeff City High School, Capital City High School, Helias High School, and Smith Cotton High School are all members of that same athletic conference, which would give us a fair amount of local competition. Honestly, I'd like more than that, but I understand that boys volleyball is not something that most high schools in our area offer. In terms of facilities and availability, boys volleyball is a spring sport for Misha. There are no other indoor spring sports, so the space in the gym is more than available. In terms of Title IX compliance, assuming Columbia Public Schools was under compliance with Title IX previous to adding girls wrestling, by adding girls wrestling, I would hope that boys volleyball can kind of fill in behind and keep that Title IX compliance. In terms of rationale and expected participation, again, parents and students have been asking for the additional program both in middle school and high school for several years. For the purposes of this class project, let's assume we've done a survey of interest at the high school, and it is wanted. We've done a survey of interest at the middle school, and it is wanted. There is a youth program, both of recreational and possibly even competitive teams that can sustain a program at the high school level. That would be ideal. As we move into costs, this is one awesome advantage of boys volleyball. There are no upfront equipment or facilities cost. The only upfront cost is uniforms. And again, we could just assume that this is their uniform cycle, so there really is no additional cost. Now, I did break it down. Columbia Public Schools is in a contract with BSN Sports to provide all Nike uniforms for our high school athletes. I'm assuming a JV and varsity. In our first year or two, we might only have varsity, but assuming a JV and varsity of 12 players each requires 24 uniforms. 24 home uniforms with our 40% discount from BSN gives a cost of approximately $25.20. For our home uniforms, that's a cost of $604.80. Same thing with the away uniforms. And again, for equity purposes, assuming we buy one pair of black shorts for every person on the JV and varsity, one pair of shorts at $20 gives a shorts expense of $480. So total in JV and varsity volleyball uniforms, roughly $1,700. Some people might ask about the libero and their different uniform. For this purposes, I'm saying the home games, the libero can wear the away uniform as a different shirt, and vice versa. At away games, the libero can use the home uniform. That will give that contrast necessary for the referees. Again, with Title IX, it makes coaching salaries extremely simple. One head coach, similar to the girls, $3,770 for the season. Two assistant coaches at $3,120 each for the season, which gives us a coaching expense of just under $10,000 for the season. This is where it starts to get blurry. MSHSAA has a maximum match rule of 36 matches. I'm not taking into account any tournaments where we won't pay referees, but then again, we'll also have to pay the tournament entry fee. Similar to the buses, where if we go to a one-day tournament, we won't have to pay a bus for every game. We just pay for the bus for once for 3 games. So again, this is where costs get a little blurry. Assuming we have 36 total matches, and assuming a perfect split of 18 home and 18 away, 2 referees per match, which gives a total of 36 referees, at a game fee of $110 per referee per match, gives a referee expense of just under $4,000. Again, the whole purpose of adding boys volleyball would really require that we add for the entire conference. Otherwise, the cost of travel becomes extremely limiting. Assuming we have 36 matches, we have a home and home with all teams in our conference. That means we have Jeff City coming in 3 times for Capital City, Helias, and Jeff City. Sedalia coming in once. That leaves us going to each of them, and then going to St. Louis as the next closest competition 12 times. Our bus fees to Jeff City 3 times, Sedalia once, and St. Louis, by my rough estimation, is about 150 hours of buses. At $50 per bus per hour, gives a total of roughly $5,250 in transportation costs, which admittedly is huge. And then the normal supplies budget you would give to any sport of roughly $3,500. Again, a total cost to start a boys volleyball program is just under $25,000. So, in summary, for viability, we need student interest. In Columbia, we do have interest for boys volleyball. Sanctioned by MSHSAA, boys volleyball is. Facilities available. Yes, it is. Spring volleyball, there's no one else in the gym. That is completely viable. Title IX compliance. Without looking at specific numbers, I would assume it is, because if we were in compliance before we added girls wrestling, I would contend that boys volleyball and girls wrestling can kind of be each other's partner and complement each other. Local competition, in all reality, local competition seems to be the biggest issue for Columbia Public Schools adding boys volleyball, because it would require all of those in our conference to add it, and preferably some other local small schools around us, and I just don't know if that's viable for them. At this point, we'll take questions and terminate the presentation. Thank you.